you kind of had to decide when you was going to be a child and decide when you was going to be an adult. Kind of a recurring factor in my life, because mum was working a lot, my sister's working a lot, my cousin's coming over from Jamaica, immediately working. You just had to kind of fend for yourself at times, whether it was cooking your dinner or whatnot, or just behaving yourself when you just really want to just go and be wild. But it's just like things weren't synonymous. My way of thinking didn't feel synonymous to like my mum or what they wanted, or going to school, or even my brother at that time. It was just like I wanted to just be wild. And I feel like to a certain extent, because we had to look after ourselves to a certain extent, because mum and dad are working a lot, night shift, double jobs, there's no time, sometimes there's not time to, embrace your child, so to speak. So you kind of go looking for it in other places, and then you find it on the street, because there's other kids that feel the same as you, and then you develop like an unbreakable, ridiculous bond. I think it's like times like this, as I get a bit older, you realise, you appreciate how important family is and stuff. And, as I said, like gene pods and figuring out why you are like this. And then nowadays I understand why I'm like how I am, because I'm like the double of my mum, like hot-tempered, quick to, rebellious like my mum. However, at that time, it was just like I needed someone that looked like me, that felt the same, and I could we could go through these pains or these celebrations together. And that ended up being my friends. And as I said, we wasn't at home. We was in hostels, we was in flats already, like from 15, 14, we had these things, and we did it together. Like that was something about East London Isle of Dogs, we was together. And them old school ideologies ran through to us because of like people's parents and grandparents and stories and things. It was all closely linked, through that celebrated villainy, like the craze and all that malarkey and whatnot, and certain people and blah, blah, blah. Like, we looked up to that stuff and loved it. And we looked up to the good in it, and we looked up to the bad in it, but we done it. I had the best times of my life in George Green, man. That's where I first really found out about like fashion. You're watching people, what people was wearing, and you're thinking, oh, that's all right. You want to try and get your hands on that no matter what, somehow. It's where you first really found out about birds, and you're fancying, and you're snogging in the corridor, and you're running from the teachers, and it was just a place, it was just like a melting pot of so many different races and faces. We just got on with it. We just melted and merged, and it was amazing. It helped us stand out within East London and the borough, and they always say like, they'll be your best years, and make sure you want to go back there. And it's 100% rings true for me, because I'd give anything to just go back to school, running around town with my mates like Taylor, my brother, Greg, Charlie, Jermaine, like all my mates that I still knock about with now, still there. Like the birds, all of us, like through thick and thin, kind of like came from that school. Do you know who was massive? She lives in South East London now, my English teacher, Miss Starkey. I've always liked words and always liked, literacy and things. And she was a strict woman, and she always pushed me. And I learned to love words even more during those classes. So big up Miss Starkey. Richie Campbell, bless his soul, he's not around anymore, but he would never say no to a young person, bring them into the boxing club, allow them to train and box for free. Taught my brother went to professional boxer until he got quite ill, and that was all due to, the love and dedication that people like Richie Campbell gave us. Angie Renee Smith, she kept me in school for as long as she could. We wasn't allowed out at lunchtime and things like that, little things that she said, I'll look after them, It was like quite tumultuous, like black kids that were just, probably all going through the same thing, because most of our parents are out working and we're not receiving what we need to receive at home. So she tried to give us that in school. She was an amazing figure. I just wanted to big up Angie, she's lovely. Down the road, I've got my mate Shay's mum, Lisa, who used to look after me when I was a naughty boy, and I'd gone out to stay there, or Carol, Tanana, Menning's mum, Charlie, his mum, Dawn. There's loads of people that would just, just take you in. I wish we still had that kind of open door policy a lot more. It's kind of diminished due to the times, and people don't know how to look outwardly as much as we used to. But hey ho, hopefully we can reinstall that through messages and the teachings, and how we carry ourselves as a crew, like me and my friends. We hope that we can push that, because it's something that we don't ever want to get rid of. A lot of it is like a catharsis, lyrics, like letting these things go, these words go from like a deep place from inside and not really thinking about it as much. I guess I've probably been blessed in that kind of way where you don't think too much when it comes to like wordplay and thinking. I think I got that from my dad, because my dad always speaks in riddles and rhymes. From a kid I was always like obsessed with how he could always rhyme all the time and then laugh and giggle. And as time progressed, I realised that I probably have shared the same kind of prowess that he has. It's all about music in my household, whether it was my mother's house or my dad's house. At that time, it was always all about music. My mum's car, cooking on Saturday or Sundays. My sister in her room, she had a massive hi-fi, 300 or 400 CDs. It was all about CDs back then. It's all about being the music, even on the dial-up internet, taking a day to download an album or something. Do you know what I mean? It's always been about music. I don't like to think about it too much. When I feel like I'm thinking about it too much, I'll scrap it because it's too hard. But when it comes to just writing the lyrics and whatnot, it shouldn't be hard, because especially if you're telling the truth, you don't have to fabricate things. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to, just be into one genre of music. There's billions of people on the planet. If you want your message to cross across the planet, then you need to know how to get people's ear through a variety of music genres and sounds. They might not like this, but they like that. And I think it's a skill to be able to reflect that in a record, in a piece of music that you put out. And different sounds and different genres invoke different feelings. With the folk, you can really get into someone's heart and talk to them and make them hear you. With the reggae sounds, make them move, make them dance. And then when you play live, people give you that emotion, and then you get to give it back. It's like a circle, a cycle that doesn't get stopped, and a recycle of energy. That's amazing. And then you can jump off the stage and drink beer with them. It's great. To big up Ali with that, my producer who I worked with, man, he's always when it comes to the music we make, he helped accentuate that no boundary thing and not hanging on and not being afraid to use elements of sounds from all over the world and kind of stuff. And at that point we don't do a lot of drum bass tunes, so I don't want it too high. I was like, all right, what about this style, a bit more loose? And that's where I guess the bossa nova came in. And then once we started that, I had a guitar riff anyway, which was quite simple, which was quite, do I dare say Spanishy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, then the lyrics just came through, and it just made me think of home. It made me think of the struggles that we go through as working class people and stuff. And just wanted to let people know, but it's all right, no matter where you come from, it's fine, we're gonna get there. Celebrate, hard times, celebrate, good times, celebrate together as well. If you were a lad, back in the day, you got to get through. You got to do what you got to do, innit? And just like the kind of things what we said in Venezuela, if times are bad, you group together, yeah, and you get on with it together. You don't leave your lad behind, kind of thing. You do it. If as the lyric said, you risk it all and you never look back. If you and your mate might get nicked or whatever, you get nicked and you keep your mouth shut and you just get on with it. It's the first thing people kind of see on you outwardly, and not that that's the only thing that matters. But you might as well set yourself up in a good stead. You might as well do 50% on visuals. Love to put on a pair of shoes, love to put on a pair of trousers, love to put on a nice shirt. In CP, everything looks neat. In secondary school, I always realised that if I wanted to survive and pull a couple of birds, I've got to take them kickers, they weren't kickers, them shoes my mum brought off and put my trainers on before I get into school, because them boots weren't pulling me no birds, you know what I mean? So my mates back in the day, Menin and Tanania, they would always have the top gear, and I was the same foot size as them, so they'd nick their tracksuits or borrow their shoes, trainers and that back in the day, because you get a bit promiscuous when you get into secondary school, And that's when you start dialing into what you're wearing and paying attention to what you're wearing. It's a fun time, part of finding yourself, do you know what I mean? CP was something that was always quite out of my reach, but I used to see the flash lads or the older lads. I couldn't get my hands on it at that time, which was way too out of my price league, and I couldn't bother to ask my mum because that would have sent that with a Caribbean earache. So, it was all about wishing and wanting back then, and then eventually, getting it by any means necessary. One of the first shirts I bought from some wholesale place to a CP, but I just bought it, even though it was like extra large and didn't fit me. Could get away with it back then a little bit more because I think it was a bit more baggy, but I thought, no, I always wanted to get a bit of CP, do you know what I mean? And yeah, man, put on your trousers, put on your shoes, put on your shirt, put on your jacket and get in a cab. You can't crease it, you can't be on a bus and nothing like that. You might even bunk the cab, but it was worth it, do you know what I mean? You got to look neat. Yeah, man.